10 things you didn't know about Jannik Sinner. There are two versions of Jannik Sinner that the public knows. The first is the Machine, the relentless baseliner who just completed the Sunshine Double without dropping a single set across two Masters 1000 tournaments. The stone-faced competitor who has won 34 consecutive sets at the biggest tournaments in the world. The player other professionals describe as a shark who, once he locks onto you, devours you. And the second version is the quiet, humble kid from the Italian mountains who seems almost surprised by all of it. Both versions are real, but neither one tells the full story, because behind the statistics and the trophies is a genuinely fascinating human being with a backstory that most tennis fans have barely scratched the surface of. These are 10 things you almost certainly didn't know about Jannik Sinner. Number 1. His first sport wasn't tennis, it was skiing, and he was elite at it. This one gets mentioned occasionally, but the depth of it gets glossed over. Sinner grew up in Sexton, a small village in the Dolomites in South Tyrol in northern Italy. His parents both worked at a ski lodge. He started skiing at age 3 and began competing in races when he was 8. By 7 years old, he had already won a national title in giant slalom. This wasn't a hobby. He was, by any objective measure, on a path toward a professional skiing career. He was a top-flight competitive skier from ages 8 to 12, and the proof of how serious that trajectory was became unexpectedly clear in February 2026, when the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics were underway. A 2009 race resurfaced showing a young Sinner finishing ahead of Giovanni Franzoni, who went on to win an Olympic downhill silver medal at those very games. That is the caliber of athlete Sinner was beating as a child in a sport that wasn't even his main calling. The reason he quit was specifically physical. "I was winning a lot when I was young in skiing, and in tennis, I never won," he told Vogue in 2024. "And then slowly I started to lose in skiing because physically I was not ready to compete. I was always quite skinny and everything." He chose tennis not because he was better at it. He chose it because tennis allowed him to recover from mistakes. "The reason why I chose tennis was, in tennis, you can make mistakes. You can lose points, but you can still win the match. In skiing, if you make one mistake, one big mistake, you cannot win." That philosophy, the ability to process loss within a larger competition and keep going, is precisely what makes him so hard to beat today. Number 2. His first language is German, not Italian. This surprises nearly everyone who hears it. Jannik Sinner represents Italy, speaks Italian fluently, and is the most celebrated Italian tennis player in history. But Italian was not his first language, it was his second. Sinner was born in Inishin, in the northern Italian province of South Tyrol, a German-speaking region. His mother tongue is German. He grew up in Sexten in a German-speaking household and attended a primary school where instruction was in German. South Tyrol was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire until 1918, and approximately 70% of its population still speaks German as a first language. His Italian improved greatly after moving to Bordighera at the age of 13, through daily contact with teammates, coaches, and school friends. Today, Sinner is fluent in 3 languages: German, Italian, and English. But the one he grew up speaking at home, at school, and with his family is German. It is a detail that quietly underscores how unusual his upbringing was relative to almost any other player on the ATP Tour. Number 3. His father, who is his personal chef on tour, missed the French Open final because he couldn't get time off work. Jannik Sinner's father, Hans-Peter, has spent over 40 years working as a professional chef. And when his son reached the biggest match of his career to that point, the 2025 French Open final against Carlos Alcaraz, a 5-hour and 29-minute epic later described by many as one of the greatest matches ever played. His father was not in the stands. Not because he didn't want to be, because he couldn't get the day off. Sinner himself indicated his dad was unable to get the day off to travel with his mom to Paris. His mother was there. His father was in a kitchen somewhere in Italy, working the job that helped fund the dream that was unfolding without him. The story tells you everything you need to know about the Sinner family. There is no entitlement in this background, no private academies or privileged pathways. Just a chef and a waitress from a ski lodge in the Dolomites who let their son leave home at 13 to chase something they'd never experienced themselves. Sinner said after winning the 2025 Australian Open, I wish everyone could have my parents because they always let me choose whatever I wanted to. They never put pressure on me, and I wish this freedom is possible for as many young kids as possible. Number 4. He left home at 13 and had to learn to cook, do his own laundry, and grow up faster than almost any of his peers. Most 13-year-olds are worried about homework and friend groups. Jannik Sinner was packing his bags and moving away from his family to train at the Piatti Tennis Center in Bordighera, hundreds of kilometers from home, in a region of Italy where the primary language was different from the one he had grown up speaking. In his post-match press conference after winning the Australian Open, Sinner opened up, "I went away from home when I was 14 years old, so I had to grow up quite fast, trying to cook for myself, trying to make laundry. You know, the first time it's different, but then in another way, that was maybe the fastest way to grow up. I think for me it was tough, but for my parents to leave their son at 14 years old, it's also not easy." He lived with the family of his coach at the academy, training full-time in a foreign linguistic environment, with no parents in the house. The self-sufficiency and emotional resilience that define his court presence today were not taught by a sports psychologist. They were built into him by necessity at 13 years old in a small coastal town in Liguria. Number 5. His childhood tennis idol was not Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, or Novak Djokovic. It was Andreas Seppi. Every young tennis player seems to have grown up idolizing one of the big three. For Sinner, the story is more specific and more local than that. His tennis idol was Andrea Seppi, the Italian journeyman who spent 2 decades on the ATP Tour and reached a career-high ranking of 18 in the world. When Sinner was 17, he set the explicit goal of overtaking Seppi's achievements. Seppi is from South Tyrol, the same German-speaking Alpine region where Sinner grew up. He was the reference point, the proof that someone from that world, from that background, from that small corner of northern Italy, could make it on the biggest stage in tennis. The fact that Sinner has since overtaken Seppi's achievements by a distance so vast it's almost incomprehensible to measure doesn't change what the role model represented at the time. It was never about aiming for greatness. It was about finding someone who looked like your world and had made it work. Number 6. His famous fan group, the Carota Boys, started because he ate a carrot during a match. The Carota Boys, 6 Italian men in full-body orange carrot costumes who travel the world attending Sinner's matches, have become one of the most recognizable fan groups in professional tennis. They've been at Grand Slams, Masters events, and Davis Cup ties. They have over 160,000 Instagram followers. They have their own merchandise. But the origin story is almost comically simple. The whole thing started when their idol Jannik was eating a carrot on the court during a changeover at a tournament in Vienna. That included a birthday trip to Rome's Italian Open in 2023, ahead of which they decided to buy carrot costumes for the occasion, inspired by the Vienna moment. What was meant to last a weekend became a movement. Sinner himself has acknowledged them directly. "They are more famous than I am, to be honest," he told reporters. The man who sparked an accidental global fan club by snacking on a vegetable during a changeover. Number 7. He recorded a song with Andrea Bocelli, and the words he spoke in it are genuinely worth listening to. In June 2025, Jannik Sinner collaborated with Italian tenor Andrea Bocelli to release a track called Polvere e Gloria, Dust and Glory. The song sees Sinner deliver lines in a speaking role between Bocelli's operatic tones, drawn from his winning and losing speeches. The track was released via Decca Records and Universal Music. Written by Stefan Mocchio, Giovanni Caccamo, Alfredo Rapetti Ceope, and Bocelli himself, and recorded at Bocelli's estate in Tuscany. From a player who left home at 13 with no safety net, who switched sports because his body wasn't built for his first one, who built a game from the ground up in a language that wasn't his own. Those words are not a cliché. They are a personal statement of belief. Bocelli said of the collaboration, "We're from different worlds, but close in commitment and discipline in the constant search for authenticity and beauty. I have always been his fan, fascinated not only by his talent, but also by his humility and his inner strength." Number 8. Pope Leo XIV once joked he couldn't invite a sinner, and then invited him anyway. In May 2025, during the Italian Open in Rome, A journalist suggested that the newly elected Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope and an avid tennis fan, should host a charity match. The Pope's response was immediate and sharp. Leo joked, "We can't invite Sinner," an apparent reference to the English meaning of Sinner's last name. The exchange went around the world within hours. By that same week, it had been resolved with considerably more warmth. Sinner visited the new pope at the Vatican, gave him a tennis racket, and offered to play. Leo looked around at the antiques and replied, "Here we'll break something. Best not to." "An immense honor to meet Pope Leo XIV," Sinner said, visibly moved. The meeting featured Sinner's parents, the Davis Cup trophy, and the new pope serving as proof that the reach of this particular tennis player had expanded well beyond anything a kid from the Dolomites could have planned for. Number 9. He was appointed Italy's ambassador of sports diplomacy, but turned down an invitation to perform at Italy's biggest music festival. After winning the Davis Cup and the Australian Open in 2024, Sinner became a figure of genuine national significance in Italy. Italy's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Antonio Tajani, appointed Sinner as ambassador of sports diplomacy. He was honored at the Prime Minister's office and met the President of Italy. He received honorary citizenship of Sexten, his hometown, and yet, when the Prime appeared on the biggest stage in the country's cultural calendar, he said no. The president of the Italian Tennis Federation publicly backed the decision, advising that Sinner should be protected from excessive media exposure and should not be exploited. In an era where athletes are relentlessly managed for brand-building opportunities, the refusal to take the most visible platform in Italian culture is a statement of priorities. He is not interested in celebrity, he is interested in tennis. Number 10. What he just did in the last 4 weeks has never been done before in the history of professional tennis. This one is brand new, and it is the most statistically extraordinary item on this entire list. On March 29, 2026, Jannik Sinner won the Miami Open to complete the Sunshine Double, winning both Indian Wells and Miami in the same season. He is the first male player since Roger Federer in 2017 to complete the double, joining a list that also includes Novak Djokovic, Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras, and Michael Chang. But that is not the remarkable part. The remarkable part is how he did it. Sinner is the first player ever, male or female, to complete the Sunshine Double without dropping a single set across both tournaments. Not one set lost, across 2 of the biggest hardcourt events in the sport, played back-to-back over 4 weeks in completely different climates, against the best players in the world. He has now won 34 consecutive sets at ATP Masters 1000 level. His record in 2026 stands at 19-2. His only losses this year came to Djokovic in the Australian Open semi-final, a match in which Sinner won more total points than Djokovic across 5 sets, and to Medvedev at Indian Wells before he found another gear entirely. After the Miami final, Sinner allowed himself one moment of something close to wonder. "It's something I never would have thought because it's difficult to achieve," he said. "We made it somehow, so I'm very happy." Made it somehow. The player who was a skier before he was a tennis player, who left home at 13 speaking the wrong language, whose father missed the biggest match of his career because he was working in a kitchen, who was inspired by a journeyman rather than a legend, who turned down San Remo, recorded a song about earning what you have, and once sparked a global carrot-themed fan club by snacking during a changeover. That is the full version of Jannik Sinner, and somehow he is just 24 years old. Which record or fact surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below.